Hey, welcome back to Spellbound. It's me, BEEJ, and it's been a minute. Or at least it's been a minute since I've read these books. So I read most of these in the fall, honestly, during my dark and moody TBR like I do every October, but I still really want to talk about these. And so these are dark and weird and creepy books that are across all genres. I just have a lot to say, and let's get started. Skary Childrin and the Carousel of Sorrow. This is by Katie Towell, and it was published in 2011 by Books for Young Readers. So this was a really cute and kind of creepy little middle grade. It's about a gloomy little town called Widowsbury, and these three girls who are students at this boarding school who are all kind of different. So one girl only speaks to ghosts, the other is rumored to be a child of werewolves, and the third girl is just kind of a little violent, but there's nothing wrong with her. But they are all three very bullied at their boarding school by the other girls and by their very mean headmistress. Except one day they get a new librarian who's very nice to them, but that's very strange because nobody new ever comes to Widowsbury except this one charismatic candy maker, but he's super harmless with his licorice twists and custom caramels, right? So anyway, this librarian is the first person who is ever nice to them at Madame Gertrude's School for Girls, and they become fast friends. Then immediately the librarian vanishes, and the three girls are determined to find her and to find what her disappearance has to do with this very, very creepy carousel that they have found in the heart of the woods. The atmosphere of this book is fantastic. It is very creepy, it's kind of weird, and it has some Ray Bradbury elements to it as well, really likening back to Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And it also has Roald Dahl elements in relation to the characters. So cool atmosphere, cool setting, cool story premise and concept that's very Bradbury in nature, and very Roald Dahl-like middle grade characters that are very colorful. So well done. But the reading experience itself wasn't that fun for me. I think this was a debut for this author, so storytelling and storytelling mechanics, even down to the sentence level, don't seem to be Towell's strong suit. Her dialogue felt clunky at times, and even sometimes weighed down the story when it didn't need to. So really it wasn't a favorite of mine, but I do still recommend it, especially for younger readers, for middle grade readers, or for fans of particularly creepy middle grade. This is one you'll want to check out. I'm going to get more comfortable for these reviews because I've been in this chair for a while. Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente, and this was published in 2021 by Tor.com. So this is a novella, first of all. It's also a retelling / allegory. I think it does spoil the discovery from the reading experience to tell you ahead of time what story this is an allegory for, but it is pretty easy to figure out once you start, and it is a biblical allegory. So anticipate it being commentary on that. So this book is categorized as horror technically, this is in the horror section of Barnes & Noble, and it is horrifying. It is. The imagery is pretty gruesome. However, this novella is very clearly literary in nature, and it is much more poignant than it is horrifying. I personally would categorize this as litfic. This is literary fiction that is also horrifying. I wouldn't, it's not genre horror, So that's important to know going in. Now, because this novel is clearly an imagining or an allegory of a biblical parable, it is providing clear commentary on religion, but specifically the intersection between religion and strong patriarchal dynamics. In fact, I first heard about this book from another book influencer who I don't watch anymore, who said that this book felt kind of sacrilegious. And first of all, what an endorsement, immediately added it to my Pango cart. But second of all, it's only sacrilegious if you acknowledge that modern Christianity is in fact inextricably synonymous with a violent patriarchal worldview. Yeah, if you don't accept that, then it would just be considered commentary. But I guess critical thinking isn't for everyone. Hide, the graphic novel by Kirsten White, published in 2023 by 10 Speed Press. Now, I have already popped off about this book a couple of times. I did it in a wrap-up of the novelization. The novel was my best book of 2024 on my book bracket or battle of the books. So I have talked about this book a lot and like can't stop, won't stop, and I'm not ashamed of it. But this is the graphic novel and I want to talk about it. So like I said, this is the graphic novel of the book Hide by Kiersten White, which was published the year before in 2022. It's an incredible horror novel about a 2-week-long hide and seek competition in an abandoned theme park. And our main character, Mac, short for Mackenzie, is the sole survivor of what is known as the hide and seek massacre, in which her father hunted and killed her entire family in a deadly night-long game of hide and seek. So yeah, dark, gritty. This book has it all. I've gone on and on and on about it, but anyway, with the novel, White's writing was economical and told this tale perfectly, considering that it is at once a classic genre horror novel. Like, it is just a good scary time. It is also literary in that it is an allegory for a very popular Greek myth, and it is scathing social commentary on the apathy, cruel indifference of Gen X and baby boomers as like a generation. And I was so here for all of those 3 levels. But this graphic novel was a unique ride as well. I loved the very colorful comic book style of the illustrations because I think it communicated the dichotomy between this like very whimsical place and what you're expecting when you go in and like the actual horror of what is happening, and also helped, I think, communicate, because it was so colorful, like the gore and the trauma that took place throughout the whole book. I think having that specific literary or having that specific illustrative style helped support and tell that story really well, and adapting it into this version. I also think that what this book did really well is the graphic novelization of it helped establish these characters that you meet at the beginning as very unique from each other, because the book starts, I mean, there's 14 players for this hide and seek competition. And so like any, good mystery, they dwindle down, they start dying, right? And so, but 14 characters up front, that's a lot. The book, I think, is written really well in that it does give each one of them like a thing that you can kind of attribute to their character. They're not just like George, Bob, and Greg, and they all have brown hair and boots. They all have like a special, unique thing to their character that makes them unique. But being able to see it represented visually, I think, really helps in establishing those characters early on, which really helped, I think, make the book feel richer in a different way. I will say that the graphic novelization of this book did force us to lose a bit of its literary criticism in terms of the social commentary, but it did not make us lose anything in terms of the literary allegory, and it still had those aspects. So in this way, I don't think I would recommend one or over the other. I think that for whatever you lose in the graphic novelization, you also gain uniquely by having it be represented visually. They're both great books, just in different ways, and I love them both, and I love this story so much. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward, published in 2021 by Viper. This book is intense. That is the first thing you need to know. This book is so intense. It is a thriller horror, but with a mystery in the middle. Unfortunately, it is one of those types of books that's incredibly difficult to talk about without giving away spoilers. And I know how annoying that is. I do, because I remember watching all of these reviews and being like, well, what can you tell me about this book? And everybody would be like, I can't tell you anything about this book. You just have to read it, but it's so intense and it's so good if you like these types of intense, gruesome, horrifying, scary books. And like I do, but I also wanted to know more to make sure that I would like it, and I don't know how to do that for you, because it's so much more than the plot twist at the end, which I guarantee you won't see coming. Like, you don't know where this book is headed. So it's so much more than that, because it's the way that this story is told through these very unique POVs, and also it's the storytelling itself that is part of the journey. It is part of the experience of reading this book. And so to give you more information would be to either A, directly mislead you, or B, to spoil the plot twist, and I'm gonna do neither of those. But I can tell you that this is the story essentially about a missing girl and the person who took her, and the girl's sister, who is determined, who knows who took her, has tracked them down and is determined to get her back. So yeah, this book is scary. And it's scary in a true crime way, which is not my type of scary. I do not read true crime. I don't like it. I don't watch true crime. Nothing. And so I was surprised, just by that alone, I was surprised that I liked it. But also, I think what made this feel different is the very surrealist nature of the storytelling, which comes directly from the narrator, not the writing style. Because the narrator, the guy, is an alcoholic. He's on all these different substances, which make his perspective and his point of view very surrealist, very unreliable, and you miss these pockets of time. So you're more focused on piecing the story together and trying to figure out really what's going on more than you are the very true crime nature of what's going on. I mean, it's still very much on the page, but it's not the only thing on the page. And so I think that really helps distract and helped focus my mind and my reading experience. So as frustrating as it may be, you're just going to have to go for this book, like based on vibes and vibes alone. You're just going to have to go with your gut, honestly, because there's just nothing that anybody can tell you. So if you like creepy, dark, gritty, and chilling books and stories that have like a true crime feel, you will love this book. You will love this book. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. But if you don't, and if you're a cozy reader, I cannot warn you more strongly away from this book. Yeah, I hope you like it. And if you do, come back and tell me, because I want to talk about this book with someone, but I don't want to put it out there to talk about because I don't want to give spoilers away. It's just one of those that you just can't talk about. So come find me so we can talk about it. The Witchwood Boys Are Trending, self-published by C.M. Stunich in 2024. The extreme joy I experienced when my favorite romance author just casually dropped this new romance. So let me just back up. My very favorite romance series have been written by C.M. Stunich. Havoc, my favorite romance series ever. The Secret Girl and Rich Boys of Burberry Prep, right? So those are my favorite romance series of all time. And they've all been written by C.M. Stunich. However, C.M. Stunich is also a very prolific author and has written mini-series. And I have read everything that she's written, but those are the only 3 that I like. I'm not really on the fence with her other things. I straight up do not like them. So I either am obsessed with what she writes or I really don't like it at all. But she's still my favorite romance author because of those series. But when I learned that she had written a book about a magical portal in the woods, 3 male witches, that there's a time difference, which means you have a guy from the 50s, a guy from the 80s, and a guy from the early 2000s. This book could not be more BJ coded. Witchcraft, fantasy, portal, time elements, and a character from the 80s and the early 2000s. I couldn't sign up fast enough. I couldn't download it fast enough. I freaked out. Okay, which was part of its downfall. They're not. The Witchwood boys, all 3 of them, are all dicks. And they're not lovable dicks. They're just horrible men. They're red flag men. And not I don't think that this trend is cute. I don't think during a time period where we're actively losing our rights and actively experiencing your body, my choice on social media, I don't like this trend in the book talk and romance community where it's oh my god, he's such a red flag. That ain't cute. That ain't it. And so then to have gone from these books where the men aren't trash to just why would you choose now to write men that are? I don't get it. These men aren't nuanced at all. They're not even complicated. They're just brutes, and from beginning to end. And this book was not only actually physically difficult to read, but I was upset through the reading experience of this book. There are major content and trigger warnings for this book, and they are in fact villains, but not in a dark shadow daddy kind of villain way. No. What makes a dark shadow daddy villain is that the villain will put the love interest above the world, right? And so that's what makes him not a good guy and technically a villain, because that's not the moral good. It's a subjective good. But for his love interest, for his girl, he will literally let the world burn. That's what makes a dark shadow villain. That's collectively acceptable. Someone who will do the opposite and who will put specifically himself above the woman, but also in a controlling, domineering, and abusive way, that's unacceptable. That's not cute. That will never get redeemed. There's nothing to the plot that will make that a redeeming moment. I felt physically upset and also suffocated just throughout the reading experience of this book by the nature of the plot and what happens. It's not just she is forced physically into this coven through means that I'm not comfortable talking about, but also that means that somehow she's never able to be more than 6 feet physically away from them for the rest of the book. It is deeply unsettling to read, that romanticizes abuse, and not just a little bit of abuse or a little bit of manipulation, but actual on the page assault. What is that? I don't know. It was so hard for me because this book was so me coded. Literally everything about this book was something that I was so excited to read. What an actual bummer. The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johnson. This was published in 2023 by Dutton. So this is a Nutcracker retelling, and I love Nutcracker retellings. First of all, I always read a Nutcracker retelling every December. They're one of my favorites, and I say that I think in every video, like, this is my favorite. I have lots of favorites because I love lots of things because I love to read. But I love Nutcracker retellings, and this one had a unique approach. First of all, it follows two sisters, or it's about two sisters, Clara and Natasha. And this is unique, first of all, because typically a retelling will choose either main character Clara or main character Natasha, because those are the two characters given to the lead of the Nutcracker, depending on which version you're using. So to have them both, I felt was like already, I'm like, oh, I'm in, because you know your Nutcracker stuff. So in this one, Drosselmeyer is like a mysterious and magical figure in the community, and he blesses and curses the two sisters on the day of their birth, which is Christmas. And he blesses Clara with light and blesses and curses Natasha with darkness, basically. So she grows up her whole life in her sister's shadow. So the rest of the story from there, for the first third, follows the narrative, classic narrative of the Nutcracker. But then it expands very dramatically once Natasha reaches fairyland, essentially. So I've got a lot to say about this one because I had a lot of feelings, and they weren't all bad and they weren't all good. They're just, I have a lot to say about the reading experience. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are the elements. This Nutcracker retelling had a lot of horror and like grotesque elements, and I liked it. It kind of moves it from like, this is not a whimsical little story, into, oh, the stakes are real, the elements are real, it's very like creepy and gross, and I liked that. It's very grotesque in fairy. It's not sugar plums and rainbow fluffy clouds and cotton candy. It is like gross, creepy, like there's rotten things, and it's just grotesque, and I liked that a lot. The other thing I loved was this very heavy and influential historical fiction tie-in. So this book takes place in Russia right before the Bolshevik Revolution, and throughout the entire book there's this very strong undercurrent of like discontent and angst and tension between the working class and the upper crust of society. It's not just kind of on the periphery, it's a very, very present and prevalent in the setup and in the characters, both main and supporting, and even in the way that it influences our main character and her own plot and her own journey. And because this undercurrent was so prevalent, right, and it was so necessary to so many elements of the actual story, of both plot and character, and because it is so culturally timely, it's not even a subplot, it is part of the plot. I was expecting this as an idea, as a tension, to be also part of the climax and payoff of the book. But the author, like, she like just stopped just before pulling the thread all the way through, and I don't know why. So yeah, it not only wasn't present in like the last two acts, which were the climax, and then like the almost like a denouement, which was not necessary. This was part of the makeup and part of the plot and part of the characters through the whole damn book. And then as soon as you get to like the climax, she just doesn't pull that thread all the way through, and the entire plot unravels because of it. Because it doesn't have the whole main thread all the way through. It just is like, oh, well, never mind, that actually doesn't matter. It was just about her the whole time, and she goes on and lives a happy life in New York. It ends up not mattering. Yeah, so in this way, I think you could tell that this was the author's debut. I don't know if because it was a debut, I can't say that she was like pressured by a publisher to like just finish it up. It doesn't necessarily feel that way. It just feels like she really had something to say, and then in an edit or revision, she like backed off from it, and I don't know why, because power to the proletariat, you know what I mean? Like, this was really, really prescient and felt important, and it was very interesting in the way that it was set up and in the points that it had to make. So yeah, you could tell it was her debut, but I was still really disappointed in that, and that's why I ended up like just unhauling it. It's not a retelling, that's ultimately for me, but had it really seen the message all the way through, it probably would have been my favorite retelling ever. So Nocturne by Alyssa Wells, published in 2021 by Viper. So this is a very dreamlike story about Grace, and Grace was a violinist, and she would play on like street corners and I think maybe even in concert halls in the Italian district of Chicago, until her brother gets caught up with the mob and is killed. Her mother dies basically from grief a short while later, and that renders Grace an orphan. And then quickly, and for reasons that do not make logical sense, she is taken in at the local ballet studio, where in just 3 short years she becomes the ballet studio owner's favorite dancer. But the story really begins when the studio announces that they're about to do a new show and a new performance, and Grace is named as the lead. And she's named as the lead not because she's the most talented, because it's kind of understood that she is in fact not the most talented dancer at the studio, but because a very rich and mysterious benefactor and sponsor to the studio said that for like a generous sum, he wants to see Grace as the lead, and also he wants to marry her a little bit, kind of, but against her will also. So the studio owner kind of just sells her to this man and she has to like go live with him, but then she still goes to the ballet studio to perform. It is very weird. And it's also very weird because it is so dreamlike. Like the prose, I've never read a book that is so purple prose. The book is black. But yeah, it's weird. It's very, very lyrical. So it's hard to get a firm grasp on what's going on, but I'm getting too far into my review. So it's pretty obvious that I don't care for this one. And I think that's disappointing because I really obviously wanted to like it. I was still on my Nutcracker kick. Like it's the middle of December. It's snowy. It's like a ballet studio. It feels very dreamlike. Like I was very here for it. And it just didn't do what I wanted it to, I guess, in a lot of different ways. So it's a beautiful concept for a story, right? Like the setting, the beautiful poetic prose, but the story itself, the plot, did not make logical sense one step to the next. And also, the story itself kept happening to our main character. Like, she didn't do anything that changed the outcomes around her. She didn't do anything that affected the story. She just was very much part of this very, very strong poetic current of things happening to her. And then she would like brood on how she felt about those things. And that was just the plot. And like, I couldn't. While at the beginning, I thought that like the dreamy haziness was like really neat, but like the fog never lifted, you know? So over time, I actually found that very frustrating. I'm like, but what actually is going on? And why? Though, this doesn't make any sense. And why isn't she asking questions like, hey, why did you sell me to this man? Either I'm a whole adult and I don't have to do this, or I'm a child and you've sold me into marriage. And it didn't make any sense. But all that being said, I obviously didn't like it, but I know a lot of people who really did and who have told me so. And I'm so happy for them. Like, just because this book did not resonate with me because of all those reasons, I don't think that the book itself is inherently terrible. I'm not like boo to this book. I'm very happy that a lot of people like it. And so you might, you know, if you're really into purple prose, if you're really into like lyrical writing and you kind of like those maybe dark. I know that this is like a cross between several different stories, and I don't know enough stories that take place at the opera to know it. I know there's like a lot of Phantom of the Opera elements. There's a bit of a Beauty and the Beast element, and there's a bit of like another story that I was very unfamiliar with that is like a classic either ballet or opera story, and I don't know it. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean I think that nobody will. And so if this sounds interesting to you, you might like it because it is dark and a little creepy. Okay, so those were 7 dark, weird, or creepy books. Have you read any of these? And if you have, like, what did you think about them? Do you agree or disagree with any of my hot, warm, or very cold takes? Let me know below. I would really love to know. But also, I would love to know what your favorite dark, weird, or creepy book has been in the last year. Like, what have you been reading that's like, oh, that's so weird and I just want to talk about it. Talk about it here. Like talk at me about whatever book fits that for you. Yeah, I would love to know it. And I'm always looking for more dark, weird, and creepy recommendations. Yeah, so that's it for me. Take care, drink your water, fight fascism, and happy reading.